What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Crane Kick Selects podcast. It's been a minute. I feel like I say that every time, but this time it truly has been a minute. I just feel like every time I feel like it's been a million years since we've gotten together. This time it kind of has been, just because there's been a lot going on. We've been busy people, and into the season was kind of like just all of a sudden upon us, right? And trying to get some end of season awards out there for everybody to vote on, which are finalized now, which we're going to talk about today, amongst a million other things. We had a ton of questions for this episode that we're going to tackle. In fact, we're going to let a lot of the questions just fuel our conversation. We already had plans to talk a lot about it, most of this stuff, but we've had so many questions that we figured let's let that be our engine. So before we get into the thick of it, since it's been a minute, we got to check in with everybody. Kyle, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's been a minute for me just on the show here in general. So
Yeah,
glad to be back. And yeah, we're right in the thick of fall, obviously, and everything's going pretty well. I would say that the fact that it's almost Thanksgiving, I'm just gonna be that cliche person that's like, I can't believe it's already Thanksgiving. It was just October,
it's true
because
though.
time is time. But it really is like I feel like I haven't chatted with you all in this forum in a while, and so it's good to be back. And um, obviously, I think last time we talked, there were still, we were in different seasons. The League One season, everything was still going on. So now that that's wrapped up and finished, I'm excited to kind of put a bow on that season and look ahead to the future.
Nice, nice. It really is weird how fast November is gone. I was looking at the calendar and I was like, what the heck? Thanksgiving's next week. Whereas like other months, I felt drug on forever and ever and ever. So I don't really know what that's about. Maybe it's just like the busyness of the season. Like now you're like in the thick of it, and people are starting to think like Christmas shopping already and getting all that stuff in order so you're not last minute gifting. And I don't know. It's wild. But Dylan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm feeling the same things you guys are talking about. I mean, it gets dark at 5 o'clock
Uh,
already,
ugh,
and like you know,
daylight savings. Blah.
there's a there's kind of a point where like it is okay sometimes. Like every now and then, it's like all right, like the darkness. It's cool to like kind of stay inside and hang out, but it kind of sneaks up on you every year, and it always makes you feel like really weird about it. And like you wake up and it's dark outside, and then sometimes if you in you spend your day inside like working, and then you go outside again, it's dark again. It's like it's just dark all the time.
I will say that I saw a fantastic like tweet maybe or X or Blue Sky or something that was
Yeah.
like I enjoy watching the lovely sunset on my lunch break. So I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's perfect.
yeah.
It's spot on. That's 100% accurate. The whole time that you were going on about that, Dylan, I felt like I missed an opportunity to play like an emo track in the background. And it's like, darkness is okay sometimes. Sitting in the darkness and it's dark all the time. Like, I don't know. There was a lot of dark talk there, but it's true. It's very unsettling to me, and it makes me just feel like, why are my kids still awake and why haven't they eaten dinner yet? And then I look at the clock and I'm like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. It is not bedtime. It is, barely dinner time. What is happening? I hate it. I
That's
hate
what
it.
I'm saying is like you eat dinner at 6 o'clock and it feels like you're eating dinner at midnight. You know, it's like
Yes, and
crazy.
I can't stand the people that are like, yeah, but at least it's daytime whenever you're getting up and going to work. I don't need that. I'm going to work. Why do I care if it's night or day whenever I'm heading to work? I want like daylight whenever I'm off work and I can actually do things. Like I can't even like take my kids outside because like it's midnight by the time we get home. But it is what it is. It's stupid, stupid. I hate
And
it.
also, we're at like a weird moment where like us as LSC fans, we don't have soccer going. We have this 3 week period where we don't have the Super League and the men's season is over. And then if you're a fan of the Premier League, like me, we don't have that because of international break. And like international break is okay, but I feel like there's
Mhm.
not as much stakes in it. Like during
Yeah.
this time period, it feels like they're just playing friendlies. I know they're like qualifiers and stuff, but it doesn't feel like there's as much stakes. So it's just kind of like boring for sports right now at the moment, you know?
Hey,
True.
Tyler, how are you doing? We never asked you how you're doing.
That's true.
You know what? I was waiting for you guys to finally realize that it's been 400 episodes in
Yeah.
6 years of doing this. I don't know.
All
I
right, well,
lost
let's
count.
get to the questions. We'll just dive right in.
Got
What do you think?
Whoa! I knew it was fake. I knew it was a setup this whole time.
Got him.
Yeah. No, I'm good, except for allergies. Decided to rake our millions of leaves, and so nature decided to assault my sinus cavity. Just like Earth does. I don't know what I ever did to it. I recycle. But fighting it off with the good old Zyrtec and all that. But everything is good otherwise. I'm kind of psyched for Thanksgiving. I'm not really a big Thanksgiving person. I'm always like, get Halloween over, let's get to Christmas. Let's go. Let's move this thing along. But I still have to admit, Thanksgiving, for just the get together factor and the food, is clutch. So my mom's already talking about the menu and asking, hey, these same things, is this what we want? What if we try this thing that's different? Because like, of course, I have to have like my once a year pumpkin pie. That's the one thing. Like, I don't eat pumpkin pie ever, which I don't know anybody that does eat pumpkin pie
That's,
outside of Thanksgiving.
it's like stuffing. It's like really the whole Thanksgiving meal.
It's
You can just
true.
be like, I don't eat any of this stuff ever. I love it. I try to
Right.
get my over under every year is like 3.5. If I can get over 3.5 Thanksgiving meals,
Yeah.
fantastic. The more the merrier. I love it. But
Perfect.
yeah, I never eat it unless it's Thanksgiving week.
It's true. It's all like none of it's really super special food either when you really think about it. But then somehow it's like special enough that you're like, oh, I eat this once a year and that's it. And that's kind of like my done
Especially
deal
because of
thing.
the occasion.
Right, right. And I have to say, like, my mom makes these sweet potatoes that like they're like in slices, and then they have like brown sugar, oatmeal, and marshmallows and all this stuff. Things are
That's
like
the good stuff.
candy.
Yeah.
It's like candy. It's so
Yeah.
good. And I never grew up being a sweet potato person. And then she started making those when I was an adult. And I discovered it and I'm like, man, I've been suffering this whole time. And you could have been making these.
Yeah. No, it's great. And there's also like the people who like Thanksgiving food are the people who like mixing their food together. And then if you're like my
Yes.
food can't touch, then you just don't like Thanksgiving because it's impossible.
Yes. Oh man, I know way too many people like that. And I'm sorry if you're one of those people, but I'm like, that's the whole point of eating a meal. It should all go together. So what's the difference if it mixes? Like I don't get the thing where you're like, I'm gonna put together a meal of things that complement each other, but I'm only gonna eat them one at a time. I'm judging you a little bit. I won't lie. I'll say it straight up. I'm not a judgmental person, but I do judge every single one of my friends that does the single food at a time thing.
Dylan's awfully quiet right now. Just
It's
saying.
because he's one of them. I bet you. I'll bet you. Look, he's gonna say it. He
He's
won't
like,
even unmute.
he's trying to log
No,
off.
no, I'm a slow eater, and I don't like to. One thing I don't like to share food with people, but I do like with mashed potatoes. Like I love to mix mashed potatoes with like the
Mm.
turkey.
Yeah.
That's always game. Um, I mean, I don't want to mix the stuffing with the mashed potatoes. I like the stuffing on its own. You know, I think that's where I draw the line.
I just don't
Okay.
really even care.
Yeah. Every bite's
Whatever
different.
happens to that plate,
Whatever.
it,
Yeah.
you know,
Sometimes I black
exactly.
out. I don't even know what happens. I
Yeah.
just like,
What did I just do?
yeah.
My mom's always like, "Do you want like two different plates?" And I'm like, "No, we'll just
Yeah.
pile it. We'll make a tower,
Yeah.
and then that'll be that."
You get the Dixie, like those really oblong, like
Hmm.
ridiculously wide. That you only need these once a year. They're like super heavy. You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? And like,
Oh yeah.
you're like, this plate's way too big. And you end up like filling the whole thing.
And then
Yeah.
you're like, "Dang!" And I ate two of those. Before you know it, you're like, "What just happened? How did I do that?" But it's I don't know. I look forward to it. All the foods I don't normally eat, you get to enjoy them that one time, and you get your fill. And then I feel like when it comes around again in another year, you're ready to go. You're ready for action. You actually like green beans again, and then they fade off into obscurity. Then they come back again. So I don't know. I'm psyched about that. It's a good time, and it's nice to just get together and watch football and eat way too much food. go, a little bit comatose into hibernation mode there for a bit and, rebound. Let's jump into this because like now I'm just wishing it was Thanksgiving. Let's get into like LSC stuff.
Yeah, I'm
good?
kind of hoping for pie now. We were all this.
Snow pie, dude.
Yeah.
Snow pie. Although, like, just quick side note, you have to have Cool Whip with your pumpkin pie if you do it. It has to be an
No.
obscene amount. What?
No, not Cool Whip. Just like whipped cream.
I mean, okay, whatever floats your boat.
No,
I thought
no,
you
no,
meant
they're
like
different. Like Cool Whip's not good.
okay.
Whipped cream is delicious.
That's a lie, but yeah. We can say some type of whipped cream substance has
No,
to go
they're
with pumpkin
different though.
pie. But
I'm just gonna move this segment along because
Okay,
I don't
yeah.
think you guys will get through this.
No, you're
yeah,
right.
okay. We
This
can
is how
try to
we
get
end
to
up.
the non-whipped cream people.
This is how we end up podcasting past midnight. So
Yeah.
here we go.
True. All right. Anyway, we got work tomorrow. All right. Hey, so I already told everybody we're going to kind of let viewer, listener, whatever questions fuel a lot of our conversation because we had a question for just about every single portion of the show that we were planning on doing anyway. So it worked out really nicely. A lot of people had a lot of things to ask, a lot of similar questions, and it's going to kind of carry us through this episode. And hopefully we won't do our past midnight recording like normal, like Kyle said. Yeah, Dylan.
Let me say something. The Discord has been getting a lot of love, and I appreciate it. And I think it is the best way for you to get your podcast questions read on the podcast because we had a lot of good ones from there. So make sure you guys join. If you're a listener, you should definitely join. We have a pretty active community, actually. We're posting stuff pretty frequently, and everyone's very friendly. So I really recommend it, especially if you're a fan of us. Please do it.
You really don't want to miss out on Dylan's weekly It's Wednesday, my dude memes. You probably just need those to get you a pick me up through the week. So if only for that, even if you don't like us or the podcast, just join for the memes on Wednesday. That's all you need. That'll get you what you want. All right, guys, let's jump into the fact that our USL1 season has come to a close forever because we're never playing in the USL1 for the foreseeable future anyway, unless we're like one of these other clubs that yo-yos up and down, or promotion relegation becomes a thing. But right now, none of that's on the table. We're moving up to the championship. Everything's come to a close. It's got a nice little neat bow on it. Maybe, I don't know. That was wrong. Yeah, that wasn't a good metaphor. Anyway, let's talk about, to kind of get us going, some highs and lows off of the season. So we actually had some questions from people asking us kind of what we felt about the season. Let's start with something a little bit more romantic, right? A little bit more romanticized, like our personal things that we think we will miss the most from being in USL1. And if we had any particular memories on or off the field that are going to stick with us, which I think we've kind of answered that before, but let's kind of indulge that question a little bit. What do we think, guys? Like, if you're thinking what we're going to miss from USL1.
I think building those rivalries will be, a thing that I miss the most. We've played these teams quite a few times already, and there are certain players that kind of have, a certain aura, and it's fun to root against those people. And, building those rivalries has been really fun. And, talking with the other podcast hosts as well, the other content creators who interact with us. That's been fun. I mean, I think it's a fun league too, overall, and it can create a lot of fun storylines and crazy narratives, all that. And we might miss out on some of that craziness, and that's sad in a way. But
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I'm going to miss the playoffs a lot. I'm really going to miss the League One playoffs. I heard they were really cool. It would have been awesome to be part of them. To me, what I miss a lot about the League One experience is like the kind of grittiness of like, and a lot of it has to do with like temporary venue, obviously working for the club, some of the ins and outs that I was privy to, like just a lot of the like scratching and clawing and like behind the scenes of, what it takes to run essentially a startup minor league team, which like minor league teams are hard to like operate, and startup businesses are hard to operate, and we just kind of merged both of them together. So in a weird kind of like way, like when you miss school, like in the middle of summer, you're like, I kind of miss school. You're like, no, you don't, not really, but you
Yeah.
kind of do. Like it's kind of like that. It'll be I don't ever want to go back to those days, but it was good to get through them. And to Dylan's point, like League One, wacky stuff did happen. And so you kind of miss those, I guess. But I think like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever, it'll just be kind of that silly story of like, hey, remember we were like League One and we finished ninth and then eighth or whatever. Like it was just
The good old days.
not eighth, obviously, but actually, I do think we'd be eighth if we counted. So Jaeger Cup came back to bite us this year because I think we were eighth in the combined table. Anyway,
Somebody said it was 7th.
Oh, really?
Fact. Yeah.
Oh, well.
No, don't get me started.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I'll miss a little bit of that, the scrappiness,
Yeah.
the startup vibe that we had the first couple of years.
I've been, involved with championship communities a little bit, like lightly, just a tad. I had a little stint on the USL show, and then that kind of just got to be a little much for doing that plus this, and so I took a step back. And so I got a taste of championship, but I feel like what's going to kind of be a big thing for me that I'm going to miss is League One is very close and tight knit because there's so many fewer teams, right? Like you go up to the championship and you're working with 30 some odd teams versus, 12 to 14 or whatever the number ends up being now that we move into this next season and teams are coming in, leaving, everything in between. It's going to be different, I feel. Not necessarily in a bad way, but you even think about there being 2 different divisions as opposed to everything just being intermingled and everybody being forced to interact because you're playing everybody throughout the season. I think that's going to be really, really different and kind of tough to get used to. So I think that I'll miss a lot of that aspect. Dylan said it earlier. We've had an opportunity to interact with a lot of different people from a lot of different teams and other content creators. And I'm sure that those opportunities will continue to come in the championship. I just don't know if they'll take on the same form, right? Or have the same depth. It's kind of hard to tell right now until we get there. So I will miss a lot of that. I'll miss that human aspect of interacting in a little bit more of a personal way with other fans and other teams. I feel like it'll be a little bit more fleeting with a lot more teams this year versus like, oh yeah, I remember this guy, every time Gio shows up in the comment section of something and gives us a hard time. We'll miss some of that stuff. It's going to be something that's going to be hard to get used to, I feel like. And in a lot of ways, I'm going to miss this league for that reason. So I think that's kind of mine. And I know things will be good too, but yeah, I don't know. We had another part of that question too.
Yeah.
About favorite memories.
Yeah. Give us some of your
Dylan.
favorite memories, Tyler.
Yeah. Mine kind of like ties into that though. Along with that, I got a chance to go on a decent number of away days, not a million, but enough. And I felt like I knew people at those away days, at least enough to, say hey or kind of give them some ribbing, while we were there and give them a hard time about our teams facing off. And so that was pretty neat. And just, I don't know, just the intimate level of connection that you get from USL1 overall. I know that's not a specific memory. I think I've given a lot of specific memories in the past. I've talked about the Charlotte game with Amal saving it last second and winning, that PK. I've talked about, meeting up with people, getting to spend time with friends. But I'm going to go kind of macro level and say that they're kind of the same thing. Honestly, that's my favorite memory, just getting to enjoy other fans in this league and our own fans. And I know that'll continue in a new way. It's mine.
Yeah, I mean, In a way, my answer is like similar to yours. It's hard to really say because like there's a lot of good memories that I've had. I guess if we're thinking League One, like I'll always go back to the NoCo game, like going to that. I've talked about that several times. Just really awesome going to an away game. Plus, they don't exist anymore, so that makes it like even crazier. But like overall, I just like love going to the games with my wife and like just spending time together, and just having that as a thing that her and I do. I know that will obviously continue into the championship, but it started in League One, so that's obviously a big high point for me. Kyle.
Yeah, I would say that's like we mentioned, some of the away matches. Obviously, being there for the first match at Knoxville, that was pretty special, despite coming away with a loss. For me, it's obviously a little different. A lot of my favorite memories are, I guess, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff in the office, just chopping it up with the team when it was a really small team, like a tight knit. There were like 5 of us, it felt like, in there. And just seeing everyone grow and Stocks grow in his different roles. Um, and as it relates to League One, I would say specifically just like navigating some of the like the USL itself growing and the club growing alongside it, and being like kind of having a seat at the table in a lot of those, like not only as a club, as a person within the club, but the club itself, dictating what some of the USL's, future plans and future landscape would look like. So it was just kind of cool seeing everything grow together. That's pretty macro level as well, Tyler. The specific memories are, I'd have to, go back and look at them. I feel like I've mentioned quite a few as well. The Knoxville trip, the first home match was cool, was really special. My last match, I'll always remember. And my last training, like practice, I'll always remember too. That doesn't really have anything to do with League One, but just in general, was a great memory of mine. And so, yeah, I think it goes back to that earlier sentiment of like it was just a time for growing, and it was not always pretty. It was very rarely pretty in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But you still kind of get those warm, fuzzy feelings from those authentic interactions with people and with your favorite players. And, it was, yeah, I think there were a lot of ups and a lot of downs and a lot of hard days, but it was, as a fan, I just kind of miss I'll miss those kind of like smaller interactions, because as the club grows, like already you can see it's growing and you move up to that next level. You just like, I think that access and that tangible like nature with the club and the community, I think will still exist, but it's like you always worry that it just gets a little bit further apart just because everything's growing. But yeah, I mean, USL League One creates and fosters those little environments, and hopefully that same type of environment can still exist even on a bigger scale.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, man, because I feel like, with my particular role, I feel that's kind of happening, right? Like still you have access, still it has a lot of the same vibes, but things are changing, things are different. Even this year, even as a team in USL1, it just felt like things were growing, which is good. It's a really good thing that we're growing, but things are different, and things are going to continue to be different as we grow and change, which is sometimes uncomfortable, and it makes you feel like, oh, this isn't what I remember it. But at the same time, it's more uncomfortable to be stagnant and then your club just kind of sit around and not really ever evolve. And all you can do is hope that us as a fan base help it evolve in the right way and become something even better. So that's a good point, man. That is something that kind of stands out a lot. Thinking about like this year specifically, and this will kind of lead into another question that we had as well, but it's just something I had on my mind. What are we feeling about the highs and the lows? If you had to choose a high and a low for this season, I'm kind of curious what you guys would go for.
I think the high has to be the 7-1 win. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
just was like goal fest, really, and it was at the stadium. felt pretty historic in the moment, like too. It was just like fun to watch. So that was, I would say, the high. Lows, which there are plenty. I really can't think of like one specific one. It's just like
I can.
the
I can think
overall.
of, yeah.
You guys can, because my low is just like the second half of a game, like because that's when it all fell apart. Like
It's a
every
feeling
game,
that I have. Yeah.
yeah, like the whole second half of a game was just low, like So,
Yeah.
Tyler,
Yeah.
what are yours?
I don't think anybody can argue that the high was the 7-1. Like,
Okay.
I think that has to be like a unanimous. I think you're absolutely right, man. I think that if you say something different, it's because there's some special little thing about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, but I feel like on a grand scale, like that one, I mean, we tied for the best performance as far as like goal differential in a match in the league history, right? There was only one other team that did a 7-1. So that was pretty epic. The low for me, I think, is the first point where we saw us like truly stumble and kind of like oh dang, we are not who I was hoping we would be type of
I know
way.
exactly which match. Yeah.
It's probably yours
Can I
too, I
guess?
bet.
Can I guess?
Yeah,
Is it Vermont Green?
it's Vermont.
It's
And
Vermont. Yeah.
I've
Has
been
to be Vermont.
complimentary of
Okay.
Vermont. I love them and I love everything they're doing. But for us to come in that early in the season and everybody be like, world beaters are coming through. They're going to take the league by storm, and we go play a squad that was scrapped together in like a couple weeks and they get beat like we got beat. That was not a great time. And again, I'll give props to Vermont all day. I'm not going to be salty towards them because at the end of the day, our team didn't show up. And that sucked. That was looking back and doing the whole like hindsight's 2020 type of thing. You can kind of see that being the point that everything starts being like, oh, wait a second, this is not right. Something is not right here. It's like
Yeah, because it would have been less of a low if that was a one-off type thing, but it was almost like
yeah,
this omen. I
yeah,
guess.
it really was.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it, man. It was like that point in time where you're like, okay, what happens if you go back in history and change that one thing? Does it all get better, or does it get worse and you get relegated to League Two? It was not great. You know what I mean? And it was easier to deal with before we had the rest of the season as well on top of it. And I think now that everything is finished off, I'm like, that hurts a little bit more now.
Yeah. I can definitely, yeah, that is definitely the low. And
Yeah.
like right after that, it felt like nothing could go right.
Yeah. Every once in a while we had these little like glimmers of hope, glimmers of, oh wow, look at our team, they're playing together, but it just never quite
Mo-
held
Mostly
together and made shape.
mostly in the Jaeger Cup too. That I felt
We
like
did get some pretty decent hope throughout the Jaeger Cup. Like early on too, we were like, "Oh, look at us! We're actually like coming
that's what
away
I'm
with this."
saying.
Yeah, you're right, man. And it was like, all right. So that one was like, it felt pretty good for a while. I'm not gonna lie, it gave me a little bit of a boost watching us do well in the Jaeger Cup until all of a sudden we weren't, But man, we were like weirdly hot for the Jaeger Cup games, and league games not so much. It just never quite translated very well. And I don't know what that was about. I don't know if it was just timing or who we were playing against or what, but I don't know. So Kyle, that was your high, right? And your low?
Yeah, I was like extremely confident going into that game. I don't even remember. I think I said we were going to score a touchdown on them and something like that.
Yeah, you
It was
did.
bad. Yeah, Dylan wasn't happy about that.
I was
He
Oh
was
yeah, that's
right.
right. He yelled at you.
He was right. I mean, that was bad.
Yeah.
I take full credit for that loss.
Wow. So if you've never
I
said
don't know.
that,
I don't know if I've ever said that. Right. I don't know if
you would
the
have a
players
cup.
know that, but I mean, it's on me.
Yeah.
You let
Dang.
all those headers in.
I did. I didn't mark anyone
It's
on the back
Kyle.
post. Like, yeah.
It was all Kyle.
I've never
I
drawn
saw
up one set piece defense in my entire life, and it showed. It showed.
did. I could tell you didn't. It was, see, about time you took responsibility. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we kind of have like a weird consensus here, it seems. We were asked, and this kind of, I wanted to ask what our highs and lows were first, because we were asked what movie or TV show would we use to describe this season? If we could kind of equate it to a movie or a TV show.
Okay. So
Yep.
I went with Veep, right? So I'll explain that. Incompetent leader with a group of workers who didn't really work quite well together, but still fail upwards at the end. We're getting promoted for playing poorly. So Selena, who is Julia Louis-Dreyfus' character, is like, completely useless. She's not really good at her job, but she still ends up being successful at the end. So
Yeah.
Nice.
I went for a weird one. I was kind of feeling like, because I was having trouble. I kept thinking of movies that I'm like, yeah, but they do fine in the end, and I'm like, wait, that would not be accurate. That doesn't mesh. So then I was just like racking my brain. I was actually probably thinking way too hard about this. I thought harder about this than any other question, which is sad in some ways. But I finally settled on Game of Thrones, and that's just because everybody kept getting injured all the time, and I equated it to every time like one of your characters in the show, you're like, oh, they're okay, then they die. You're like, oh, that's it, they're fine, and they die. And then also thinking about the very first episode, you got like Ned Stark, and everybody's like, oh yeah, Sean Bean, he's gonna be a really important character, and he kind of is likable, and he's probably gonna take this whole Game of Thrones thing by storm, and then he dies right off the bat. Right off the bat. We died right off the bat against Vermont Green. So we were Sean Bean. So this is the best I could kind of like scrape together. That makes sense, right?
Yeah. I went with a
Yeah.
movie actually. And
Yeah.
I didn't think this one out very long, but I would my answer is the Fantastic Four, the 2015 film.
oh no,
Wait,
Like,
who was in the 2015 one?
Miles Teller,
yeah,
That's right.
Miles Teller.
Okay, because I keep
Yeah.
getting them all mixed
Kate
up in my
Mara.
Michael
head.
B. Jordan.
There we go. Yeah.
So you'd already seen a Fantastic Four movie, so like you kind of knew what to expect.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen Soccer in America, like this is going to be great. Big budget, bringing in some names like, I like Miles Teller. I've seen him in this thing before. Like, oh yeah, Cam Lancaster just down the road, brought him in. And then it just kind of flopped. Like it wasn't great. There were some okay individual performances, but like all in all, just didn't live up to the billing, and probably made, it was a box office flop. I think it was. I don't remember it being very positively
Probably.
received. So
Yeah.
that was what I went with. But you could really just go with any like big budget, hyped up machine type of movie. A lot of like Marvel and DC are guilty of a lot of these where it's just, you're playing on IP and hoping that or like an actor, you're just like, oh, we paid this guy, X amount of dollars. And doesn't mean that he wasn't great in the movie or in the performance. Cam had a great season, but in general, the whole thing just didn't really work.
I looked
That's
up
pretty good.
the Fantastic Four. The budget was 120 million, and the box office bomb grossing 167 million. So they made their money back and then some. So
Probably
Okay.
better off than us.
It's not that bad.
but it did earn several Golden Raspberry Awards, including Worst
That sounds
Director and Worst Picture. So,
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Well,
Yeah. Hey, but we didn't win the wooden spoon, so yeah.
we
Take
did
that,
get our
everybody.
money back.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got our money
So
back.
what about it? Yes. That was a pretty good one for pretty much on the fly, man.
Thank you.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was
No, it wasn't the movie The Fly. He said Fantastic Four. The Fly wouldn't have worked. We all know Jeff Goldblum's movies.
yeah, I'm a big body horror fan. This season
Yeah.
was it was a lot like that. Yeah.
Oh man, that's perfect. So like we talked a lot about like disappointing moments, but then again also some moments where we had like a little bit of hope. Players were balling out. Things were looking okay. There was those shining beacons that we kind of grasped onto, and then they'd be fleeting. So we actually had a couple of questions just about our players from the season. And one of them kind of goes nicely with where we're leaving off with that discussion we just had, asking us about our biggest surprises of the season and our biggest disappointments in regards to players. this season. So we kind of have like the double-edged sword. So who we were like, whoa, okay, I didn't know you had that in you, to I expected more. What's going on with this? This one's a little difficult for me, because in a lot of ways, like I expected our guys that stayed on to ball out. Like that, you'd seen it before, like Ates. I was like, okay, he almost won the Golden Boot last year. I think he could probably come close again this year, and he did a respectable job of that. You know, Nico did great, Amal did great, Fox did great. So you start thinking like, okay, they'll probably be just fine. Surprise wise for me, as far as being like, okay, like I see what's up. That one was probably honestly Jorge. Like, you know, I knew Jorge was seasoned. I knew that he was good, but I didn't quite realize how solid he would be. I feel like he ended up being a really great anchor for our defensive line. Stats back him up on that too. So that one was a little bit of a surprise to me for as much as I'd looked into it. The disappointment for me, that one's tough because, and this is kind of a cop-out answer, like all the players were pretty much hurt the whole season. Like, you know, I was disappointed that I couldn't verify if they were or were not what we were hoping they would be. Like David Loera, heard a lot of great things about him. Heard a lot of great things about him. We saw him for all of like, I don't know, a dozen minutes or something like that this season. And that was it. And you can't really help injury, right? I mean, injury happens. All you can do is deal with it. But it was kind of a disappointment for me that we brought in a lot of these players just to have them almost immediately get injured and then never really take off. And that kind of sucked, because then it just felt like, and this is no disrespect to anybody that we were playing, it was almost like we had to keep playing plan B. You know what I mean? It was never like we can really figure out the exact formula and go. It was more of like, well, we don't have anybody available, so here's our current formula, and let's see what goes on. So I don't know. That's a tough one for me to be like, this one player was like, meh, what's up with you? It was more of just nobody getting traction and me being like, well, I didn't really see what you had to offer. I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely get that sentiment of like, I think we were in June at some point, and it's just like we still haven't seen this team full, like, or whole, like we thought it would be. But to answer the two questions, biggest surprise for me, I mean, I was really pleasantly surprised with Alexis Cerritos just like throughout the year. I feel like a lot of times we talk ourselves into a lot of these off-season signings, and like it just, in our very short history, I feel like, and just looking around the league itself, like those mid-season, it was obviously not exactly mid-season, but those like in-season acquisitions don't always seem to like work out. Now, sometimes they can even feel like a little panic move ish, which I think we
Yeah.
maybe had one or two of those this year,
Yeah.
where, or it's just stopgap, like you said, like for injury purposes. But Cerritos coming in again pretty early in the season still, but making a fantastic impact. I thought was one that you looked at the stats like at the end of a match and be like, dang, he really like, you know, made a positive influence. Like you watching in the match, just your eye test, you're like, he's unlocking a lot in our attack that I think just match after match was, he had a very high floor for a player. Like you kind of knew what to expect, which I thought was saying something for this team, because it was much needed. You know, to me, the disappointment's probably Jaden Onan, just given the expectations and, you know, 100% healthy, probably not, but what we thought he could be and what he'd been before, even in this league, just disappointing, I think, from what we saw on the pitch.
I wrote down like a couple for each. You know, like you said, Jorge. I had him down. He definitely surprised me. I think Cam surprised me as well. Kind of, does he still got it? Kind of question. You know, always when you sign a veteran, I think it's just kind of a natural thing, and he does. You know, he's still very good, and he can still hit dead balls. Very, very, very nice. But Nico, I think, probably surprised me the most. I think just the way he stepped up, and you know, I think he improved his game even more. It really showed how necessary he was. Like there was times early where he wasn't starting, and I was like, why is that the case? And you know, I didn't get it, and I feel like throughout the season, the more and more he was on the field, he just stepped up and made plays, whether it was a goal or an assist or a pass to an assist. He was just really on it this season and really stepped up, and that really surprised me. I think as far as disappointments go, there's quite a few. I mean, Kyle, you mentioned it, Jaden Onan, for sure. I think a lot of people saw, previously what he could do, and he's supposed to be highly touted, and it just, I don't know whether it was the system or him, it just didn't really work out. I think Ebby didn't really work out either. He had these guys. You got Tyler. I have to be the contrarian, but I feel like there were injuries and all, but there were plenty of time for people to show up. And, I feel like they didn't show up. And I feel like Ebby is one of those players. And I feel like Liati was as well. I feel like Liati got plenty of time on the pitch this season and did not make the most of his time. For how much we were using these guys, I feel like it was a lot of disappointment.
Yeah, definitely as a whole did not live up to expectations. That's for sure. I think that's something nobody can disagree with. It was rough. It was rough all around, whether people were on the field or on the sidelines with injuries. Either way, the fact of the matter is, like, we didn't produce when we were out there on the pitch, whoever it was. So it was a tough one. It was a tough one, for sure. And I think that's maybe just like the most surprising thing, because you wouldn't think that we would have this many names to be able to say, that was kind of a bummer. Like, this didn't go the way I wanted, but we have like a whole bag full, and it's not what you would expect from what was happening preseason and the expectations behind that. So, it's fair, man. That's fair. So somebody wanted to know, kind of piggybacking off of this, now that we've kind of like said who surprised us, who was like, oh man, I didn't really think that it would go that poorly. They wanted to know, who do we expect to stay and leave with the move to the championship? Yeah. We'll start that off.
I mean, I would say the people that I named for surprises, I feel like maybe have a chance, those three. Altez, I think for sure. I have no idea. How much turnaround was there last season? Like, how many players did we keep?
We stuck with what, 10, 11?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 10. So
Like
a little less than half, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was
I think it'll be
staying.
less than that even this
That's
time
what
around.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that was in League One. We're moving up to a higher league. I think it's going to be less than 10. It could be half of that. It could be less than half. I have no idea. But those are my three guesses. I will say.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think with Jorge Ates, just kind of going through the list of like our roster, Cam, I think Yannick is one that.
Yeah. Oh, Kyle fell off.
We dropped Kyle. But that's okay. I did that on purpose so I could talk about it. No, I didn't. He'll be back. So I'll talk about mine while Kyle figures out a way to rejoin us. I know he got cut off when he was talking about Yannick. I think Yannick is really, really good player. I feel like one of the things that kind of was a bummer is that his international duty kind of kept us from seeing too much of him, which we saw a decent amount, but him being gone on international duty, I'm like, dang it. Like, if only we could have just kept him through those stretches, because he really was a game changer. He was nasty, like, with his footwork, and you could just tell that he was playing at a different level than a lot of people he was going up against, which was cool. The people you mentioned, Obviously, Dylan with Ates, Nico. I think you'd be silly not to have them and give them a chance at the championship. I mean, Ates has been there before. Nico deserves one. I feel like he has improved every single year. Amal, I mean, Amal is great.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be ridiculous to not give him a shot.
It would
And
be
at
crazy.
least,
It'd be
yes,
crazy to not have
Yeah.
the MVP.
He's such like a centerpiece to
Yeah.
us, like our identity, a cornerstone, if you will.
Be crazy.
Yeah. Would just let even thinking, the mentality side of things, like him and Nico, the mentality side of things, Jorge, those types of players that were like really positive culturally for the team. And I think what they would lend to a good environment.
Yeah. And you have some continuity with like the fan base, too,
Yes.
which I think is important. Like obviously you want to win soccer matches. It's not all about, getting the fan favorites, but I think it actually just happened this year that some of our best players are now 2-year fan favorites with Nico, Ates, and Amal, like specifically. That it kind of makes sense, I think, for some continuity as well. But yeah, sorry, I just kind of dropped off there for a second.
Okay.
I was like, I'm tired of this.
I
No, I
totally
heard you. I
agree.
heard you finishing up the point on Yannick, and yeah, I do think it
Yeah.
would have been great to get more consistent appearances from Yannick. But
Yeah.
I will say looking at like just from a youth standpoint, I know he was on loan, but I do think Isaac Cano has a pretty bright future, and
Yeah.
if there's a way to continue having his services, like I just think, especially being like a Lexington kid, it would make a lot of sense. So he's one, like when you look at maybe filling out some of the depth, or like I said, some of the youth side of things. We didn't really unfortunately get a lot of chances to see some of the other young guys like Eric and even like Anthony Patty. We didn't get to see a lot of these younger players. Really,
Yeah.
Kimball. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just unfortunate because of especially the way the last season ended with Kimball playing so well.
Yeah.
Just kind
He
of
was
a
on a
bummer.
hot streak.
He was on a hot
Yeah.
streak. Like he looked great. He looked like he belonged, and then just not even really getting much of a look at all this year. But we obviously don't know what's going on behind the scenes and on the training ground, and if he was in form, et cetera. But it just felt like there were certainly times this year where it's like, how is he not getting some minutes? But anyway, so from a youth standpoint too, I think it'd be nice to bring some of those guys along, but we'll see.
100% agree, man. It's really, really tough. Like Dylan said, it's likely we're going to have less than 10 that are returning, making this jump. I've said this a million times. Even NCFC, they won the league last year, and then they went up to the championship, and they still cut a ton of players. And so you think about the level. The level isn't absolutely massive between League One and Championship, but it's noticeable. And you do have to step up your game. And if you have a team that struggled in League One, like we did, you have to make lots of changes. And this isn't saying that any of the players are bad. I think pound for pound, each individual player is awesome. But as a team, it just was not working. And so we have to find a way to make a team that works. And I think that's where we're at now. And in order to do that, you kind of have to blow things up. You kind of have to say, look, we're going to kind of keep this core, this small core that we feel like embodies what we need out of this team, not only with their skills, the physicality, but also their mentality as well. So I would hope that we would be keeping players that embody those things, and that could be a core to build off of, and not like last year where we kept a lot of people just for them to either fade off or for them to have to reprove themselves when they already proved themselves in year one. There was a lot of that this year. Like they proved themselves last year, and then they either got relegated to the bench, to not playing at all, or to playing second fiddle to somebody that came in new. And I don't know like that worked very well. I hope we lean into this. Okay, these are our returners. Let's build an ensemble around them because there's a reason we're bringing them back. We're bringing them back because we feel like they're worth bringing back. So if you're doing that, you need to put them up front and center and believe in them and build something around that. So it's tough. It's tough. I know people are going to be unhappy with some of the decisions being made. I know people are going to be happy with some of the decisions being made. It's just one of those things with sports. It's like the worst, you get attached and then somebody moves on for whatever reason, or on the flip side, sometimes you get attached and they stay around and then boom, you have a club legend and it's great. And you're glad that they're there and they're always going to be there, but you just don't know year from year. But I do agree with you guys. There are going to be some people that deserve those shots, and there are going to be very few people that actually get them. So yeah, a few weeks will tell. It comes quick. It feels weird saying this because the season just ended, but January, everybody's kind of starting to kind of get together. February, you have preseason starting, and then March, you're hitting the field. That's going to come really, really quick, especially with that time warp with the holidays involved. So we got to get together. You guys want to talk some end of the season awards?
Let's do it.
I would love to.
Let's talk about awards.
Let's get it. So we had several awards up this year, just like last year, that we let everybody vote on. And full transparency, just like last year, we also had our own separate votes, which accounted for a percentage. And then we kind of did some fantastical math equation, figured out and balanced it to figure the winners for each category based on all that mathing that went on. So we have our winners for each category. Should we just rattle down the list? You just want to do that? Just
sure.
Yeah. Okay.
You do what you want.
Hey, you're the host of the show, man. We're just we're the talent.
Pressure.
You need to drive this thing.
Yeah,
you guys are the pretty faces and the jokes, and I'm just the button clicker.
Yes.
That's all it is. All right. Well, let's go in reverse order from how they were listed in the form that was used to vote. So we have goal of the year that was up. We had several amazing goals. I think that this year our goals blew last year's out of the water.
1,000%.
Yeah, the options.
Agree.
We had some really good goals last year. Don't get me wrong, but this year, we had trouble narrowing it down. I think I started with a list of something like 20, and then we pared it down. Of course, that was a broad net, and then we really got into the core. And then there were 10 that were oh man, these are pretty nasty. And then we trimmed that even more down to 6. And even amongst those 6, they were phenomenal.
And we were trying to in transparency too. We didn't want to load up on 3 goals from Cam and 2 from Tess. It's not like we really had to try very hard to do that, but that was something that I think we either intentionally or at least unintentionally, when we were whittling down, we eventually ended up with each goal was from a different player for what it's worth.
Right.
So we think we got that player's best goal. Doesn't mean that, like I said, Cam or Altess or, someone couldn't have had more candidates, but the way we whittled down, that's kind of how we ended up with the goals that we ended up with.
And for what it's worth, Tyler, I disagree with you. I think last year's goals are whack compared to these goals, to be honest. They really blow last year's goals out of the water.
I can't believe we even counted last year's goals as goals after looking at this year's goals.
I know.
But
what a
you
disgrace.
have to give credit though to Sosos though, which won last year.
That one
could have been in the mix for this year.
Let's be honest. Too. Tate's also could have maybe.
Weirdly enough, Sosos mirrors a lot of what Isaac's. You notice that? How it was almost the same type of deal, crushing defenders right and left, and then you just sail one off to the far post, and you're like, what the heck?
You know what? Bring back Soso and Isaac. Bring them both back.
Right. Yeah. Just come on back. We'll get them in here. Well, the winner of that one was Cam Lancaster's goal against Charlotte. That one was just nasty because he created his own volley.
Yeah.
That was wild. And I forget how many yards out. It was well outside of
downtown.
The box. Yeah.
It was from downtown.
Mike Green would have said bang on it for sure.
100%. You should have edited that over it whenever we posted it. It should have been in there. That would have been amazing.
Maybe a double bang. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? But it was a really good goal. I think in my mind, I loved all these goals, but I really enjoyed him popping it up in the air and then hitting it on the volley and it being from, like you said, Dylan, downtown and just in. It was beautiful. It was so skillful, so beautiful, power, finesse. I feel like I'm talking about like a Jaguar. I'm like one of those British guys in the Jaguar commercials that says it weird.
Jaguar.
Jaguar, Cam Lancaster, Jaguar.
It was such a good goal that they put the wrong score on the scoreboard. They were just like in
They put a
awe
million.
of it. They put one for Charlotte in that
Oh, yeah.
game.
You ever like see some of those some of the like the high school, this is more exaggerating, but like just for this one very short instance, and maybe a few other times this year for Cam, but like you ever see highlight footage from like Zion Williamson in high school, like his basketball, and there would be like,
Yes.
you know, Pete from who just got out of like, you know, math, like trying to guard him, right? And he's looking at him,
Firefighters and
like,
plumbers.
he's like looking at him like where do they make human, like where do they make people that can do this? And I feel like for a brief moment it was like, you know, nothing against USL League One, but for a brief moment it was like, oh, he don't belong here type of move.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was one of
Yeah.
those like you know, he's supposed to be somewhere else. But you know, it was fantastic. It was like magical, and you know, obviously he has shown that he can be an elite goal scorer at a very high level. So to see brief moments of like that, you know, from him where you would consider him probably on the backside of his career, but he still has those moments that he can pull out and just be like, wow, jaw dropping.
Now let's do it next year against Lou City. Just
Yes.
for the storylines. All right, Techers. We had a lot of people up for Techers. That was pretty open one. Yannick ends up winning that one. Yannick, it's hard to argue. I mean, like Ates, I feel like definitely up there. Ates had some nasty moves. Like even if you put like his first touches and stuff in with Techers, you know, like whenever the ball would be coming flying over the top and he'd just catch it out of the air with his foot and just gingerly set it down and then move around somebody and score. And like, that was amazing. Yannick, I don't know how he got out of so many of those situations he was in. He would be like pinned against the sideline and then 3 players would be on him and he would still wiggle through despite him being ginormous and like so much finesse at all times. Like, I don't know. It was amazing to watch. I'm not really surprised he won.
There has not been a player that I've heard produce more oohs and ahs at the game than when Yannick does like skill moves. When
Yeah.
he has the ball at his feet, people go, whoa. And like it's very audible. And like when I was thinking about who I was going to vote for this award, I immediately thought of that, and I was like, who produced the most oohs and ahs, you know, on the field when they had the ball at their feet? And for me, it was him for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way. There's not really a way to like measure this. Like I feel like that's that's the easiest way to measure this award is like, yeah, how many people kind of held their breath, or like when did you expect something to happen? You know, we saw like last year, I would say Ates was like one of the best in really tight spaces, you know, like some of the stuff he was able to get out of. But I do feel like Yannick took it to a different level and showcased a really wide range, like on some assists that he had, even on one of the goal of the year nominees. At least I think it was one of the finalist nominees was, you know, on just a ridiculous assist. You know, part of that nomination I think was because of the assist. So yeah, this was one I actually don't know, Tyler, what I can't remember if you shared what your selections were, but I know this was, I think Dylan and I both had this one as our pick, and I don't remember, Tyler, if you had Yannick or not, but either way, yeah, it was.
I had Yannick.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ones we were unanimous on, that Yannick was like the one.
Yeah.
Like it was, yeah. Like Ates would have been next up for me.
Let us know if we come across, since you have all the data, come across one that is either like more polarizing or that maybe we had different than the public or vice versa.
Yeah.
Last season, when I voted, I made sure to not do like a double vote. I didn't vote for the same person twice, and I did that in this one as well. So
I tried to do that, but it did not happen this year.
Yeah. I will say, like, the goal of the year, that was like unanimous between us and everybody else. Like, that was solid.
Yeah.
So Kyle, you were asking about that. Techers, that one was a little bit of a disparity between us and the general fan base. It was kind of like interesting how different a view people had, and it was also interesting how many of these different categories, like the winner was straight across the board with everybody and blew every other candidate out of the water, and how many of them everybody was undecided, and it was just all over the place. And like I was like, I couldn't even figure out a rhyme or reason for a lot of them. This actually was a little bit of one of those. I mean, you
I
would
think I
think
saw
that,
Jorge was voted for as well too.
yeah,
Which
Jorge was in the mix,
I'm
and
not.
Nico.
I'm not like disparaging that vote. I'm just
Yeah,
talking about the variety.
there was a big
I think
variety.
Jorge probably voted on that one.
Okay,
Maybe.
fair enough.
Who knows? I'd
Hey,
vote for myself if I was in
I was
this.
gonna say I would vote for me 100%. Are
Yeah,
you kidding me?
I have no idea who voted for it because we didn't collect any information from anybody.
I'm
So
just kidding.
it's a mystery. It might
I'd vote
be
for Yannick still.
Jorge's grandma maybe voted. I don't know. But yeah, this one was one that was kind of like all over the place, honestly, except for us. We all happened to agree on this one. Forward of the year. Kyle, you want to hit us with the forward of the year, man?
Sure, I absolutely want to hit you with the forward of the year. I think this was probably one that I'm guessing is
Unanimous.
one of the ones that was unanimous.
By a decent margin, not
Okay.
like blown out of the water unanimous, but
Yeah.
enough that I could say like people felt pretty strongly this way.
Yeah, I think I was going to say I think this is one that most people will probably have like a top two and then a cutoff, I would guess. But anyway,
Yeah.
it is the truth. I'll test you forward of the year, and I think it was obviously my vote, and I think just a consistent level of start to finish in the season. If you're a Mob follower, he was top 10 in the league, 6th in the league in goals, 9th in assists. So he was doing a lot in goal creation. I think he was 4th in combined goals and assists, 3 game-winning goals. So, I mean, not much explaining I have to do about who Ates is, but he was our forward of the year.
Yeah, and for our team specifically, he did have the most goal contributions out of everybody with his 5 assists and 10 goals. So he did a phenomenal job. And you think about that with him sharing. I mean, there were a lot of forwards kind of like coming and going. But when I look at it as like you have this league legend in Cam Lancaster, and Ates is having to split goals with him, and he still managed to produce as much as he did. It's pretty impressive in my book. I feel like that's something to be said for you if you're going, toe for toe, pound for pound, and keeping pace with Cam Lancaster. I think that's a solid showing. So that's not a huge surprise. And Cam was also very highly up there. Whenever I say unanimous, I don't mean like everybody and their brother was like it's only Ates. I was meaning more like there was a lot of agreement between general fan base and us as far as like who should win it. But Cam was up there too because he.
Yeah.
Cam Lancaster,
I imagine Cam got a decent amount of votes as well.
Yeah, you're 100% right. He absolutely did. So he locked it in. Let's get into our midfielder. Dylan, who's our midfielder of the year?
Our midfielder of the year is Nico Brown.
Not Campazano.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Nico Brown.
Yes. I totally agree with this. It was not who I voted for just because for the sake of like not voting for the same person. I voted for Abel Caputo for this award, but I think that Nico also played fantastic this season. He definitely surprised me, as I mentioned in the previous segment. So I can't speak enough, highly enough about Nico.
One thing that stuck out to me about Nico too this year is it wasn't just his like 4 goals and 4 assists that he contributed. He was playing pretty heavily in all phases. Whether he was really advanced in the attacking third or he was dropping all the way back and playing tons of defense this year. He was playing way more defense this year, especially the second half than he was last year, and he was killing it. Like it didn't really matter where he was, whether he was being pulled back or pushed forward. He's just so good. He's so good. And we had great midfielders this year.
He had a lot asked of him, and I'm glad Dylan mentioned him earlier in the surprises because he was definitely a surprise for me as well. Like just the growth, the pleasant. Like we knew he's a stud, but just you like to see year by year progression, and I think he was one that other than Ates and Amal, obviously was one that from our inaugural team that really shined.
No disrespect to any other player on the field, but I feel like Nico put in the most hustle out of any other player this
He gets your
season.
hustle award.
He gets my hustle award. My
I like
Hemi
that.
award, I
Yeah.
hate that. I hate when ESPN does that stuff. The Hemi award. No.
The Hemi. Yeah, I
Don't
mean
get
he
me
is him.
started.
And we kind of have an award that is, I don't know, quasi that. Like that's part of another
Yeah.
award, I guess, if you think about it. But anyway,
Yeah.
moving on.
Whatever.
Hustle. Hustle. All right, let's hit up our defender. Who got our defender of the year award, Dylan?
Defender of the Year award went to Jorge. He is the person I voted for. I think I mentioned him in my surprises. I think he was just super consistent, Mr. Consistent. In fact, he was so adept at pretty much everything. He was the cool head on the field as well. Never lost his composure. I thought he was really fantastic with, crosses. I thought he had a really good left foot. I think he was really good at tackling as well. And I really liked how he linked up with Nico as well. I think the two made a very fantastic left side, truly. I, again, can't say enough great things about Jorge. I think you guys will echo the same sentiment.
Yeah, I really enjoyed what he brought to the field, man. He did really good, and as you said, consistent. Very good defensively. Sent in a ton of crosses, so kind of filled in that gap where we were used to seeing like Tate Robertson or Tariq last year doing those things. He stepped into that nicely, so well deserved from him. Also, super great guy. You didn't have a chance to interact with Jorge, one of the nicest dudes. So well deserved. Who we got for heart and soul? You want to do this one, Kyle?
Sure, I'd love to do this one. This is one that when we mentioned not being able or trying to avoid, not that it was a rule, trying to avoid voting for a player for two different awards. This one was going to end up for me being a duplicate. I ended up going with Nico personally, and it was Nico Brown who ultimately brought home the Crane Cakes Lex heart and soul player of the year. Tyler, I'll let you get into a little bit more, obviously, with some of your on-field interactions with him, but just someone who, if you see him out in Lexington, literally, I've ran into him. I think I texted you all a few months ago. Ran into him. Like he's just one of those like super genuine humans and cares about Lexington and cares about the community and cares about the fact that he should care about those things, which sounds weird, but like a lot of that stuff is above these players' heads, like as much as we want to think that they care, like he really does. And so he's our heart and soul selection. I'm not sure how the voting turned out percentage wise, but I know he was my selection. So Tyler, you can take it away.
Yeah, this one was kind of torn between like Nico, Amal, and Jorge. They were kind of like the three leaders on this one. This, in a lot of ways, in my mind, this is like the award. Like this is just in my personal opinion, because this award isn't just like were you good on the field. This is like, do we feel like you were a member of the community? Do we feel like when you put on that badge, that crest, like you were playing as hard as you could for the fans, not for like a paycheck, not because somebody told you had to, but because you like truly cared. And in that way, I think this award is insanely important. Nico, yeah, I'll echo what you say, Kyle. One of the coolest, most genuine guys ever. If you compliment him and you're like, man, you're amazing, he's like, no, it's my team. Like every time. He never takes credit for anything ever. All he does is just push it off on the people around him and say, they are great. They are great. And because they're great, I'm doing great. He's so humble in everything he does. We talk, I have a lot of interaction with Greenville fans. They're one of the more active fan bases. and they can't say enough great things about him. In fact, like a lot of people in Greenville are constantly like, man, I wish we'd hung on to him. I wish we had kept him because he's just that nice of a guy. And it just puts it all out there for the fans. And I think we felt that this year. I know the Railbirds complimented him. There was a couple tough games, and he was one of the players that came up and actually, acknowledged their efforts for, cheering the team on throughout the entire match, despite it being a tough one. I can't say enough good things about the guy. He truly is somebody that you look at him and you're like, yeah, that's the heart and soul of the team. And I've said this a million times. Give me 100 players like that. Give me 100. Like if we lose every weekend, but we have 100 players like that, I don't care. Like I mean, I'm being dead serious. I'm a Vikings fan. I'm used to losing important things, so it doesn't hurt me anyway. But I just want players who want to be here, not because of what's going in their bank account. With that's important. Nobody faults them for making a living, but I want players that are going to be here because while they're here, this is their city. It's not like a passing through type of situation. This is my city. This is my club. These are my fans. These are my people. That's what you want, and that's Nico, 100%.
Yeah, I can not agree more. I voted for him for this as well. And I just mentioned, the Hustle Award. This is pretty much the Hustle Award. I guess that's what you were saying, Kyle.
Yeah, it's kind of part of it. Like,
Yeah, like
it's
the
not
person.
everything, but it kind of plays into it.
To me, it's like this goes along with what you were saying, Tyler. It's the person who plays for the badge and not for themselves, to me. And I think Nico definitely displays that. He plays for the badge. He plays for the team. He plays for the community, and I think that's why he gets our vote. Tyler, why don't you end us with the MVP of the year?
I will. And I neglected to mention, I think I just said that it was Nico, Amal, and Jorge. Ates was in the mix too, actually. He was tied in there as well with top 3. So love to Ates as well. I know he's out there doing his best for us. So he's in there. MVP, this is the final award that we had. This is more of like on the field contributions. Who do we feel like contributed most overall to team success consistently throughout the season? And that was Amal. Amal got that one. He snatched that one up, and that was another one that there were a couple people that had it up for grabs. It was kind of a tight race because we had like Ates and Nico in the mix. So 3 of our returning guys, which I mean, it's not a huge surprise, right? But yeah, Amal ended up taking it, and I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I know that we got scored on. I know, we had some tough matches, but I feel like when we look at a player that was like elevating his game, this is another one of those. We talked about Nico. We talked about Ates. We talked about other people like elevating from last year. I think Amal elevated from last year, and we saw lots of games where that happened. There were saves sometimes where you're like, oh man, I wish he had gotten that one. But I have to also say there were a lot of times that like he kept us locked in, and I don't think he got enough credit for all those times. I think everybody just kind of focused in on like the one goal that got in and not like the 40 saves that he made throughout the rest of the match to keep us there. And being a goalkeeper is a really thankless job in a lot of ways because everybody tends to forget that there are a whole slew of other defenders, not just in the defensive line, but every other player on that team is a defender. Like whether they like it or not, that's the realistic approach behind this. You have 10 defenders on the field, and if the ball gets through every one of those 10 defenders and makes it back to the keeper, it's only the keeper that catches the flack for whatever happens next, or gets all the praise in some cases. And I feel like he is a player that kept us in a lot of games, and even the ones that weren't so pretty, he made sure that they weren't as ugly as they could have been through a lot of his efforts. And we talk about players who consistently give it their all and actually genuinely care and actually want to rep the badge for the pride of it and for the people and the fans. He's another one of those. And I think it showed in his performance. I think when you have that mentality, when you step on the field, that you're playing for something more than just you and yours, it comes off, right? You end up performing better because of that. And that's them all.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that, Tyler. I voted for Amal for this as well. I think this is the MVP, the person who has the most value on the field. And when he's on the field, I feel like we have a chance in games. And even going like in the Jaeger Cup when, it doesn't go to extra time, it goes to PKs. I felt like we always had a chance and we might have ended up coming away with 2 points instead of just one in those games just because of him. And, he proved us right in those, in that as well. And then even earlier in the season, one of the early podcasts we did this season, I said he looks like a Maul 2.0, and I stand by that. He definitely looks like a Maul 2.0, and he had a really good season. And like, yeah, we let in some goals, but that's not always his fault. Like we had a lot of crazy scenarios, a lot of times when our own defenders gave the ball right away to the opposing team, and you just can't always win those. And he made really athletic saves. Like we have to talk about his
Yeah.
athletic prowess. Like he's an acrobat. Like he
Yeah.
just goes and dives and gets those crazy ones. He'll go out for punches. I mean, he should honestly be considered for the Techers Award as well because he swindles defenders like with his feet sometimes. It makes me nervous. I don't love it, but he gets away with it sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like he's just a outstanding player through and through. MVP for sure.
Yeah. Shout out Amal too. His birthday is today. I'm assuming if this comes out on Tuesday. Happy birthday, Amal. I will say, good point by Dylan there. That you don't often see like the growth that we saw from his age 29 season to age 30 season. Like was impressive to me. It really was. Like
Yeah.
as a obviously not a I'm not a soccer lifer. I don't know like the ins and outs of the position. There were goals in our inaugural season that went in. You're like, the kind of head scratchers a little bit. And there were times last year, honestly, where I thought Austin gave us a better floor in terms of goalkeeping. Like just a little safer, a little bit more, like Dylan said, a little bit maybe less outgoing with the ball at his feet type of thing. But this year it was like completely different. You felt so much like better with him in goal. Again, that was something that Dylan brought up but it felt like while his ceiling continued to be that incredibly athletic, acrobatic, shot stopping goalie, he brought his floor up as well. And I think that's what really made him the overall MVP of this team, match in, match out. It was my pick. And, again, would be foolish to not have him on the team next year.
Yeah, very. And I will say one final thing too, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't think about with an MVP selection because people had differing opinions on MVP for this vote, obviously, and all respectable decisions. Like there weren't any MVP votes where I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like that person doesn't even play for the team. It was they all made sense, but I just want people to like truly think. So like put it in your head and be like, okay, if I heard we were going into a game and that person was not starting, would I feel okay with that? Would I feel confident that that person would not be out there? And is there somebody that could take that spots and step up into it? And I think that's what you really think of with MVP. Can you go without them out on the field? And I don't know that anybody this year expressed to me that they felt comfortable with the idea of them all not being in between the sticks.
I think that like line of reasoning reflects in the voting as well. I mean, the top three
Mhm.
were Amal, Atez, and Nico, and I
Yeah.
felt like anytime any of those guys were out of the lineup,
You felt a little
it's
better about them being there, right?
yeah. If they were out of the lineup,
Oh,
I
yeah.
would be
Yeah.
I was like very concerned. Like I would literally
Yeah.
text you guys and say, "Hey guys, what the hell? Like what's going on?" So
Yeah.
I
Like that
think a
one
lot
time
of
Nico had that knock. And we were like, "Where's
yes,
he at? Where's he
yes.
at?" Yeah.
And so I definitely feel like people would agree with that reasoning, Tyler.
Nice. I don't know, but congrats to all these players. I mean, like I think these are solid picks. I mean, nobody knows better than the fans. They're the ones who watch game in, game out, see everything go down. And of course, we all have like our own little things that kind of guide our voting here and there. But I do think that people really voted with their heads and their hearts at the same time, and found out like that happy medium of like who really takes this. And so, other players did great. Other players came in the running. We'll probably release top threes for these. But it just shows that we had some players that were really putting it all on the line. So congrats to all the winners for these. I'm looking forward to who we have up for all this next year. Let's do some transition. We're kind of getting into the last little bit of our episode here. But we got to talk about coaching speculation. So coaches are everywhere right now. Like plenty of coaches have been released by other teams, kind of floating out there, feeling it out, trying to find jobs. We are without a coach currently. And undoubtedly, we are trying to find a coach ASAP, because it would be silly to wait any longer and have other teams snatch a coach out from under us. It would be silly to wait too long and not be able to kind of like set foundations for what we want to do and get things, lined out, all of our ducks in a row. And there are tons of names out there, probably more than I'm even thinking of, but we did have a question that can maybe guide us a little bit. So we had a fan question asking us if we had to choose between Marcina, who was San Antonio's coach that was just released, Briggs, who was Sacramento's coach that was just released not long ago, or Ayman Zayed from NOCO. Who would we want in Lex?
I mean, I think I've been very clear on record. I've been a big fan of Zaid, and I think he gets a lot out of his players. I think he's had success with maybe he lost Trevor Amin, someone who was the Golden Boot winner, and he still put up good results. And I think even at times in his seasons where he found like little blips, he always righted the ship and got the most out of his team and produced the results. He's been in the playoffs. He's kept his team in contention very often, and I've been a fan. I mean, I don't know about Marcina. Like, he's a good coach and he has good experience. I don't know if I really like going back to the well, like going back to San Antonio. I mean, that's where we got Coach. Coach Powell has had experience there. I don't know. I just don't like when my sports teams go back to things that worked years and years ago, like signing a guy just because he reminds you of this person. I just never think that works. I think you have to be more forward thinking. And I feel like maybe Marcina has like kind of that feel to it. If, like we got Powell, who is also the San Antonio coach as well. Briggs is a very good coach as well. I don't know how much experience he has. I do think he is a good coach, though. Like, I just don't know how much I've seen from him personally.
Yeah, it's interesting too with Briggs being English. Obviously Sam Stockley, brought in an Englishman, Darren Powell. So it'd be interesting to see if that has any, any impact on it as well. I don't know. Obviously, that doesn't really matter one way or the other, but obviously with USL experience, not only as a not only Sacramento, but elsewhere too. So, I mean, I don't really have, honestly, a strong thought on one of those three versus any of the others. I do agree with Dylan's sentiment of, especially when you move into a new league, and it's the way the game is growing, that typically, going for someone like a Briggs who, 42 years old, like someone who's maybe at the start of their career and a little bit more forward thinking, perhaps, it has its benefits. And then at the same time, a more, steady type of experienced coach could perhaps help when you consider like establishing a culture. So I don't know. I'm really interested to see what direction they go with this. But I don't necessarily have a strong sway for any of those three coaches over the other.
Yeah, I'm a little torn on this because I'm actually kind of grateful that the fan question limits it to just these three coaches as our parameters,
Mm-hmm.
because there are so many coaches that you could just start like speculating and being like, well, what about this person? What about this person? You know what I mean? So narrowing it down to three is kind of nice in a way. I'm a big fan of Eamon Zayed. I think that he is a great coach and he did a lot with a little. You look at the situation Noco's in right now, and then you really get a true perspective of like, oh my gosh, like all that was going on, and he still managed to produce what he produced, which is really impressive. And in a lot of ways, I don't know. I kind of agree with like Dylan. Maybe we don't go back to San Antonio just to keep the whole San Antonio thing going. Maybe it would be fine. I know that like Marcina and Briggs both were seemingly, from what I can tell, well liked by fans. Whenever they departed, and people weren't like "good riddance, peace out." Some people were like, "Yeah, it was time for a change," but I don't think anybody really spoke ill of either of them, which I think is a really good sign. I don't know. I feel like out of the three, I would be happy with any of them. My gut probably tells me I would be feeling the happiest with Briggs. He's had a lot of recent success. He did really, really well at Sacramento. He was with them for a really long time. Fans seem to like him. He had like a 74, 49, 47 record, which isn't bad. Got them to the final of US Open Cup, in 2022, I think. Um, he's had a lot of conference final appearances, so he's somebody that I think would be interesting to see. Again, I wouldn't be mad at any of the three, but I think that he is the one that kind of like piques my interest the most and has the most plausibility. For as much as I like Eamon Zayed, I kind of feel like the club is wanting somebody that's already operating at the championship level or higher to pull down to us and take us into the championship. That's just a gut feeling that I got. I don't know. Could be completely wrong. That's kind of my 2 cents, though. I don't know. We'll see what happens, I guess. I don't think we'll have to wait too much longer. I can't imagine that we're going to have much more than a couple weeks before we start getting some sort of news, at least like saying, hey, we figured out somebody. But, timelines are always weird with this stuff and you never exactly know. But I mean, it'd be kind of crazy to think that we would sit on it any longer than that, and risk not having somebody we want available, and or somebody ready to start like building those pathways and pulling in players and figuring out who we're recruiting and who we're pulling from where, which now we've got like a million players that we can pull from. So we'll see. So I don't know. That's the short answer. I have no clue, but I kind of am hopeful in that way. So we kind of already hit a couple of the other questions, because somebody was asking about percentage of the 2024 roster to move up to the championship. We kind of touched on that. That kind of came up naturally in conversation. But we're thinking about going to possible new coaches. We just had three teams fold recently. So Memphis out of the championship, they're no longer operating. Their rights went to Santa Barbara, who was supposed to join USL1 this year, but now they're going to join the championship next year. So Memphis is no more. All those players are free. NOCO, I don't even know. They're not operating in USL1. They're saying that they're going to operate in some form or fashion somewhere, but it seems as though all the players are released. Fuego is also saying that they're going to have some iteration of their team, but you got to imagine that their players are all released. So somebody had asked us who are the top players for our wish list that we would take from the clubs that are no longer in operation, or just kind of in general.
I'll pass on Fuego. Just pass on all of them. How about that?
Oh, no Fuego at all.
I I would not, because I think Badence is good. I think he is really talented. I think he could be a really good playmaker, and he's very young too. And I think that could be a potential signing as well. Considering the circumstances. But I honestly would not be surprised if he got overlooked. Young player in League One, could just stick around League One and find his way on a different roster in the same league. So I don't know about that, but I think from NOCO, Bruno Rendon, I think he is championship caliber for sure. I think he's just always been a fantastic player. I think he brings a lot. I would really like to sign him, to be honest. And it would pair perfectly if we got Ayman Zaid as our coach as well. So I don't know. It's just the stars seem to be aligning, in my eyes at least. Obviously, Tyler has a different opinion, than I, and that's totally fair. I'm not disparaging him. I'm just pointing out the differences. People have different opinions.
No,
Probably not fair of me to just say, no one from Fuego, but not very many people from Fuego. I don't know. I kind of look at I didn't do a ton of time deep diving some of these rosters. Like obviously Memphis has guys on their squad, like their leading goal scorer Bruno Lapa, who has been in the championship level for several years. So I'm like, I guess you could theoretically find some of these types of players who have championship experience. Then there's also players like Samuel Carriega on the team that are younger and have the same experience. So, I mean, I guess you kind of need to figure out what type of player you want to pursue. Like this year, when Jorge was signed, it was like, okay, we need quote unquote an adult in the room, like someone who's experienced, perhaps, uh, I don't want to say on the back end of their career, obviously, especially not with Jorge, but someone who's well established versus going out and getting like an Anthony Patty who's still kind of raw, much younger. So I think you can look at the rosters that are from teams that are folded or teams that are no longer, and try to find. I would say if you're looking for from Memphis, it would be a player that has USL championship experience, because I do think that while Cam Lancaster has that, should he be, moved up alongside Lexington, the rest of Lexington SC, I think it'd be really important to have those voices in the room that have been there and done that, even if it's maybe not at the highest. I'm using championship now a whole bunch, trying to differentiate lowercase c and uppercase c. Even if it's someone who hasn't done it at like that top tier level, someone who's been in and around the USL championship, I think would be important. And so that's why I would look at Memphis's roster and kind of scour those players who, not only were impactful at Memphis, but have put together a career of being solid professionals.
yeah, I think that's really fair to say that, because you kind of have to start if you're looking around and say, all right, Memphis, maybe that's like our number one spot to just kind of pick our top two at least. Like, see if we can grab the top two off of our wish list from there because of that experience, because of the level of play they've been at. And then you kind of start building off of that. Like, if you manage to get them, then you know what you're working with and what you need elsewhere. If you don't get them, then you need to kind of keep searching. And there'll be plenty of players, from teams that aren't folding that are going to be available, right? Because every team kind of restructures, figures themselves out each season, decides, hey, we want to go in a different direction with this, or we have a new coach, and so we're going to kind of push you all this way and then pull people in this way. So there's going to be way more players available than just from those three teams. But I completely agree with you, man. Like, Memphis is kind of maybe your starting point. You look at players like Bruno Lapa and Akeem Ward from Memphis. They kind of catch my eye. They're really impactful players, very solid performances game after game, very solid, very consistent. So you start thinking like, okay, who's been consistent for these teams and consistently good, more importantly, and you kind of think maybe that's who you pull in. You guys mentioned some of the other players that I liked from Fuego and from NOCO. There's another player that I think kind of like flew under the radar. He came in a little bit late, with Noko, if I remember correctly. But Haruki Yamazaki, he's a player that Noko had that I feel like has untapped potential. I feel like he could be somebody that you pull up. And I don't know if he's like a starter. I don't know if he's like a depth player that you kind of work in, super sub style or whatever. But I do think that he's a player that has shown sparks of, I've got more to me than what you're seeing. And I think it'd be really interesting just to see if he gets that chance, that opportunity to prove himself at a higher level. And I know that a lot of people speak really highly of him. I made a post about it being like, yeah, this would be cool if we kind of like check this guy out. And even Amon Zayed himself was like, yeah, you're not going to find a better player. Like, this guy's awesome. So, of course, a little bit of that is, your coach doing you a solid, pumping you up and trying to make sure that you get your spot somewhere. But I think that he is somebody that's intriguing to me, if anything else. Yeah, kind of like what he has going.
One thing that I don't know if we talked about it, and honestly, I kind of saw it and then forgot about, just kind of tucked it away because it's been a while. But we've seen Louisville really exploit it. But the rule of like that you can add 2 more players that are under 18 to your match day
Yeah,
roster has nothing to do with this question, by the way. But just got me thinking more about like roster construction and the fact that like those call ups and those USL Academy signings could be more impactful. Like we've seen, I think Louisville this year signed like 5 or 6 from their academy squad, which is really cool to see. But
yeah,
could also kind of help you when you're trying to like do roster construction on like the ages. Like, we're going to bring in a bunch of mid to upper 20s players in a hope that eventually that younger crop will be ready, in a few years. So that could kind
yeah.
of play a part of it too. And then also, Tyler, you're probably more up to speed on this, but like whatever the international roster rule is as well, and how you have to kind of
Yeah.
finagle those spots too. So things to keep in mind.
That's one of those weird things that always like slips my mind. I think it's 7.
I think it
I
is
think, I
7.
think I think you get 7 is
Yeah.
what you work with.
And then I
Yeah,
think,
it's
and then there's a different,
decent.
and then like 5 maybe on the match day roster or something like that. I think there are 2 different numbers there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. So that's something you always have to consider. And, then you really have to take a deep dive into those players. If you're going to sign somebody to take an international spot, then you're like, okay, like, are you going to be the one? Because you're not going to waste an international spot on somebody you don't perceive as potentially being a starter. So that is something else that you have to kind of factor into these things. That's a really good point, man. Um, it's I don't know. I feel like it's even more exciting than it has been with like roster building, with there being so many players available. And I hate using the words exciting because I hate that there's so many players without a home right now. But sports are sports and that stuff happens, which is a bummer. But there's a lot of opportunity now for them to come play here, right? So I hope that we pick out those players that can make an impact and we feel like can really make a team, make a unit that's going to work together and carry us to what we were trying to achieve. Because we got a pretty sizable hill to climb entering into the championship. It's no longer just like figure out how to beat these 12 teams. We've got a lot of competition, and now our main rival, or at least I would assume, it'd be crazy if they weren't, Louisville. They're tough. So we have to rise to the occasion and get those players in here that are going to help us do that. So we'll have to be picky, and I hope we are. Let's this is a long episode, but I do want to just kind of like hit on the Super League just real quick because we got to show them some love. I know this is kind of like our focus on USL1 into the season, and we're not going to rehash every single Super League result since we've last been together. But I do want to bring something up with us. Okay. And it's kind of on the positive note. I actually had sent this out on our socials without you all's input because I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. I really do care. But I think it's something that maybe we all feel is a possibility. Maddie Parsons, am I crazy for thinking that she could win the Golden Boot in Super League?
No, you're not crazy at all. I agree with you. I don't care that you said it without my permission because I agree with the sentiment. She's playing fantastic right now. She is very exciting to watch. I think she's able to do it in multiple ways too, which is really fantastic. She can do it, with a header. She can do it with her feet. She can, perform skill moves, get around players, or just do one-touch passes, one-touch shots. I think she's very well-rounded. She could play like a true 9. She could, uh, you know, play deeper and, play as a false 9 as well. She can drop into the midfield. I think she's just so versatile as a player, and she's giving it her all too. Like, she's going all out there every night, every game, giving a fantastic performance. She's just really exciting to watch right now.
Kyle's got the thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's all really well said. I mean, it's not crazy, and it'd be really cool. I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be cool.
I just keep
Individual
thinking back.
awards are cool.
They are. When I just keep thinking back to like all these like players that are up there in the standings with goals scored. A lot of those players are benefiting off of like one game where they score like a hat trick or something, and then the rest of the time they've been kind of ghosts. And Maddie Parsons is never a ghost. She's either scoring or assisting all the time. Um, and so like even when you think about it, you're like, man, like she's just not losing momentum. She just really isn't. There might be a game where she misses out on a score or an assist, but then it seems like the next game she's got 2 or one of each or something crazy. So I don't know. That's just like one of those like weird bright spots for us, And you talked about Dylan, like how hard she plays. I feel like that's the whole women's team. Like I feel like every match they're all just like going just ham like the whole time. And it's amazing to watch. And I think people have a lot of fun just because of that. And it pays off. It paid off against Spokane. That was a game where it just felt like, dang, they're really about to beat us 1-0. And then all of a sudden we're just like, no, they're not. and that's a result of that. You never stop. You just keep going. You keep fighting. And I hope that this 3-week break, as much as I'm upset that we're having to go 3 weeks without a game, I hope that these last 2 home matches benefit from that and everybody has a chance to kind of decompress. I really, really wish that this 3-week window had come right after our stretch of away games. I do think it was like kind of bonkers. And we're not the only team that this type of stuff happens to. Don't get me wrong. But we had the most away days out of every other team. And then we come right back, we play a game, and then we have a short week of play on a Wednesday. And then everybody's like, why can't Lexington do it? And it's like, because we've been on the road traveling everywhere for a month. And then we come back and play 2 games in 4 days. Like, it's tough. So I hope this rest does everybody some good, especially with the holidays mixed in. And then these last 2 games we come in, because really it all comes down to we got to keep goals out. I think everybody is just now waiting for that. Nobody's like unhappy with the team, at least from like the fans I talk to. Everybody really likes watching the team and thinks the games are really exciting. I think that we enter that next phase of, okay, we're going to be all right when we finally see a good defensive performance that sees a clean sheet. And I have a feeling we can do that one of these last 2 games before we go into the winter break. I think that would be an excellent way to leave on a high note before we have that stretch where there's no matches and then we come back ready to go after the winter break's over. So you also have to kind of factor in too, we have some players that are hurt, might be back at some point after the winter break. You never know. I spoke to a couple of them and they seemed pretty hopeful that their recovery was going well, which is really, really great. But you never know. You don't know how things are going to fall. But Super League wise, I don't know. Maybe let's just do a quick vibe check. What's your vibe check for the Super League, Dylan?
I'm feeling really good about the Super League right now. Like, it's really fun to watch them play, especially in person. Like, really, if you're on the fence about going to the games, go sit in the Railbird section. It's really fun, especially for the women's games, to see Maddie Parsons' goal, the one that Autumn Weeks assisted.
Oh man,
That was like Tyler and I were
that
right
nasty
behind.
flick on.
Tyler and I were
gosh.
right behind there in the Railbird section, and it was glorious. You can see us in the replay standing up, getting really excited. It was awesome. Like, those moments are really awesome, and like go to the games and you can see them for yourself. Play-wise, I think they're a good team. I think they play very well as a team. They're the defense has to like start to get tightened up a bit, like you said. If we can stop letting goals in, I think Sarah Cox is like a really good keeper too. Like the way she can make saves keeps us in games for sure. Just like I said about them all, if your keeper can keep you alive in games, that's like really important. I think we're starting to find players in more natural positions or better positions. We saw Shin play center back the last couple of games. I think she played very well at center back, actually. Autumn Weeks is now an attacking midfielder. She's been playing very well as that, as in that role as well. I think we're just starting to find more of a rhythm, and it'll start to show more. But we have been getting some results this season. Like you can't say that about we've gotten wins. We've gotten wins on the road, or a win on the road. Like so I think there's a lot to look forward to this team. Vibe checks very high for me. Very, very high.
Yeah, I'd like to say, like, I feel like we have a ways to go as far as just like making it all happen. But I still appreciate how much the team cares and how much you can tell they care and how much effort they put in every game, even when it's not going well. I don't really feel like there's ever any quit that's involved. And I think for that reason alone, it's worth having a lot of hope and a lot of positivity about this team. I think you start losing that positivity and that hope when you realize that the players aren't giving it their all or start giving up when things get tough in a match. And I don't think we've seen that at all. So I think that goes a long way. And I think the fans are noticing that. And I wish more fans would come notice that. I right now, I know it's only going to get harder because it's going to get colder as we go into these last couple matches. But man, I wish more people would show up for the Super League. That's a bummer. And I know sometimes wins put butts in seats, but it's such a good time. Like and especially back by the Railbirds. Like if you feel weird about cheering in like the general seating, you don't feel weird about cheering over there. It just something overtakes you being that close to the goal and all the action happening right in front of you. And before you know it, like you don't even care if people see you like losing your mind. And it's just a blast. So I think that will help a lot as well for morale and to kind of keep that motivation high. So I hope we can see a little bit more of that happening, especially with like all the theme nights that have been going on. I know we have like the holiday light one coming up next on the 7th, and then 14th is fan appreciation night. So theme nights always fun. Last time at the Taylor Swift one, I'm not a big Taylor Swift guy, but I did snag a friendship bracelet for my wife. She likes Taylor Swift, so I had to grab one of those. I didn't know like half the songs, but I still had an amazing time. It was a good time. It was awesome. And I hope we get more of those theme nights. I think that plus some wins, and when we eventually get to nicer weather, if we can kind of keep doing that and keep plugging away, I think it'll pick up. But I'm not lost hope yet. Kyle, you feeling good? He's checking up
Yeah, I
on
mean,
the U.S.
I
men's
agree with you.
national
I
team.
think what's that?
I said he's checking up on the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, the last time I turned it off, it was 3-0. So I don't.
I know. Yeah, I know. We were doing
Um,
good.
yeah. Speaking of new eras, anyway, no, I think you're both right in that like progress can still be made on the pitch, but that vibes are in general high, which is a positive thing. I think that it is a fun team to watch. It's like there's something that I've learned covering collegiate athletics for however many years. Like just the the women's game itself is really enjoyable. Like women's soccer can be an extremely fun spectator sport, and I just would urge people to give them a shot. I know there's a lot going on. Your attention is pulled a million different ways. Kentucky basketball is now in season. Shout out Mark Pope. You have a million other things going on in your life, but it is a fun team to get behind, and I think I think the results will come. So vibes are high for me.
There you go. Vibes are high. We got this. All right, you guys. That was mega super duper. We made up for the time lost.
Whew, yeah, we did.
Yeah,
I'm actually like exhausted from this.
it's a good thing
I
we
am
all have
too, and
tomorrow off from work.
yeah, I'm
It's
exhausted,
so
and
good.
you wouldn't think I would be exhausted because of all the running that I do.
It's
We
true.
just hadn't brought
You
that up
run?
yet. So
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
run?
I
I
do.
totally forgot about
I
Yeah.
that.
thought you only ran just to train for this for 2 hour
Yeah.
episodes. Like that's
Well, that's what Taylor Swift does. She's a freaking
yeah,
athlete. If you've,
yeah.
I've seen her in concert. It's remarkable.
I haven't. I don't know.
Man.
I'm just
It's
not.
remarkable. 3 straight hours. I would
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
I would be
No,
literally
you'd be
dead.
fine.
No, I wouldn't.
You run like mega marathons. It's
Yeah, but I
okay.
don't sing while I'm doing it and dance.
Maybe that's your next step. Maybe you won't be tired for the pod whenever you start training that way. Just a thought.
We'll give it a shot.
Yeah, we will. All right, you guys. That was a lot. Geez, OP. We got a little while before we get some games coming our way too. So this should hopefully get everybody through the next 2.5, 3 weeks, whatever, until we see some more LSC action. Of course, the UPSL is going on too. I think there's a game next week, if I remember correctly. So a lot of times you can catch those streams if you kind of dig around for them. I wish the club would make them a little bit more accessible, but if you dig a little bit, you can find the streams for those. If you're really itching for some extra soccer in your life, Lexington Sporting Club based soccer, that is, you can scope that out. But in the meantime, maybe, I'll suggest this when I post it because there's no point in saying it now. You're at the end of the episode, but I was going to say people should maybe chunk this across the next few weeks and then be like, okay, here's my fix, just to get them through. But it's a good time. I'm looking forward to the next couple of games before we head into the winter break. And then we have to go through that long haul, which, of course, by then we'll be doing all the speculation of who's getting hired for what and what players are coming in and all that good stuff. So plenty more will be coming soon enough. Until that time, you guys have anything else? Perfect.
No, I
No.
don't think so.
Join the
Not an
Discord.
extra hour?
Hey, join the Discord.
Join the Discord. Do that. It's fun. There's a lot of interaction on there. And remember, you join, you get your Wednesday meme from Dylan. Usually like a frog telling you it's Wednesday, my dudes. So got to look forward to that. All right, everybody. Well, until the next episode, enjoy your break from soccer or mourn it, whatever you want to do. And we'll catch you again. Come on, you greens.